the record.
All right, Sheriff Zanoni. So big ruling in the court yesterday on CCWs and some of the rules that were set to take place as part of SB2. What was your reaction to the judge's ruling?
My reaction was it was about time that somebody interjected some common sense into the situation regarding SB2 and decided to make sure that our good, law abiding CCW holders could continue to carry their CCWs, their firearms in these places that they've always been allowed to carry them. And I think it's a big win. It proves that the law by Newsom and Bonta was not constitutional, and it shows that even though it's a temporary injunction, it's going to let people to continue to carry their CCWs to protect themselves and their families.
There's so many different prongs to SB2. People are going to have to take more hours in order to get certified. There was this sensitive places part. What does this preliminary injunction basically mean to the person who is a CCW holder right now? What would you tell them if you bumped into them?
Well, what it means to you as a CCW holder, it gives you the ability to continue to carry your firearm in public places, in sensitive places. You're not going to be restricted. Obviously, federal buildings and other places are still off limits, going into airports and things like that. But it's just going to give you the ability to carry it where you've always been able to carry it. It's not going to limit you, and it's not going to preclude you from being able to protect yourself. Because as we know, you can tell me that CCW holders have all these restrictions, but criminals and violent felons, they don't follow the rules anyway. So they're going to carry their guns into these places. And so now with this ruling, it's going to continue to allow those CCW holders to protect themselves by being able to carry their firearm into these sensitive places and other places that would have been ruled off limits by SB2.
The onus was going to fall onto your deputies and other deputies and officers across the state to enforce this. What's it mean now that it's one less thing that you have to worry about enforcing?
Well, what does it mean? It's realistically, we don't have the manpower to enforce all the laws there are anyway. And it really makes no sense from a public safety point of view to have to enforce SB2 the way it was written upon good law-abiding residents who are CCW holders. So really, it frees us up to focus on other things that are more important and that are serious when it comes to violent crime, because we know the CCW holders are not responsible for violent crime. You look at how when Attorney General Bonta said SB2 will help prevent violence by ensuring that dangerous individuals may not carry concealed guns in public places. Our CCW holders are not the dangerous individuals. 99.9% of our CCW holders don't commit crimes involving their firearms at all. Our dangerous criminals are felons, are our gang members, are those people purchasing ghost guns, are those people who are prohibited from carrying firearms. So really, this just allows law enforcement to focus on things that will actually help with the safety of our communities.
You and AG Bonta are supposed to be on the same side as law enforcement officials. Is it frustrating when you find yourself, you guys being divisive on an issue?
It's very frustrating. And I think the biggest part about it that's frustrating is the fact that a lot of the things that are said, a lot of things that are put out in the media from that office, from the governor's office, are incorrect and they're not factual. And I think as one of the sheriffs of the 58 counties in California, and just coming back from our Cal State Sheriff Conference, we know what the truth is. We know what the facts are. We know what the reality is. And as I've said time and time again, our CCW holders are not these dangerous, violent people that are committing these crimes. It's other individuals out there. But our Attorney General, for whatever reason, has decided to target our CCW holders because they're an easy target. They're good folks. Most of them have jobs. They're law-abiding residents of whatever county they live in here in the state of California. And he's targeting them because he knows that they will follow the law. They don't want to get in trouble. They have the most to lose. When in fact, we should be targeting criminals, gang members, felons, drug dealers. These are the people we should be focusing on and sentencing and putting into prison and putting stricter laws out there with greater punishment, not going after CCW holders who are just trying to do the right thing and exercise their constitutional rights by obtaining a CCW and carrying that weapon, the firearm, to protect themselves, their family, and their friends.
And it stands to reason that if the criminal knows that the CCW can no longer carry in any place anymore, it makes them more of a potential victim and everybody else in the community because that CCW holder can not only protect themselves, they might find themselves protecting somebody else who's in danger, right?
Absolutely. And I think it just emboldens criminals even more because we know that criminals carry guns in violation of law all the time. And now they'll know specifically where CCW holders can't or won't be able to carry their firearms. And it creates another issue, Tony, with let's say I'm at a location where I can carry my gun and then I go to someplace I can't. Now I have to store that gun somewhere if I don't have it on my person and I put it in my vehicle. And we all know that auto theft is a big problem, vehicle burglaries and property crimes. So now that gun can more easily get in the hands of criminals because the CCW holder can't have it on his or her person in these certain places. Now vehicle burglaries and other things become easier targets for criminals and give criminals and those who are prohibited from purchasing firearms legally potentially an easier avenue to obtain them through theft and stealing cars and breaking into vehicles.
Yeah, I think I saw a report just the other day out of San Antonio, Texas, where there were close to 2,500 firearms being stolen out of vehicles in just 1 year. So, yeah, it can happen pretty easily.
Well, one thing that we've looked at when we've looked at a lot of the documentation and media that was put out regarding SB2 when it passed, and one thing that both the governor and Bonta focused on was over the last 30 years, California has reduced gun violence rates compared to the rest of the United States. And while I do think that is true, when you look at our CCWs that have been issued just in Fresno County alone, it's gone up somewhere around 1,000% since 1993 when Steve McGarrion was sheriff, because we have almost 18,000 CCW permits issued throughout Fresno County. So if violent crime has gone down 30% in California over that time, but here specifically in our county, our issuing of CCWs is up somewhere near 1,000%. That doesn't really make sense if you're trying to say that CCW holders are part of the problem. I think violent crime is down over the last 30 years in California by 30%, if those numbers are correct, because of what Mike Reynolds here from Fresno with 3 strikes and you're out came up with in 1993. We had another one called 1020 Life, which was enacted around the same time. So those are laws that have been on the books for about 30 years. And I believe that that's the main reason why violent crime is down. It has nothing to do with CCW holders. If it did, violent crime would be up because we've issued a lot more CCWs in the last 30 years, you know, from what we have today issued versus what we had in 93. If CCW holders were the issue, violent crime would be much higher.
Well, I mean, it could be argued that violent crime is down because of CCW holders. I mean, it's fair to say we could have a safer community by keeping the bad guys guessing, right?
Absolutely, Tony. And that's another great point that I was going to allude to is that with more CCWs out there, you're discouraging criminals and other violent individuals from potentially committing crimes at certain locations because they know that more and more of our good law-abiding residents are armed and are trained and are willing to take action.
Uh, so I believe there's some more appeals that are going to happen on SB2. There is the issue of uh, instructors needing to be certified in a special way now through the DOJ in order to teach. So there's kind of a crux right there where you're supposed to have this certification by the first of the year, but yet nobody's able to obtain it right now. What do you see as being next? Do you think that layers of SB2 are going to continue to get peeled apart, or do you think this is probably going to be it for now?
I think there might be another layer of it that gets peeled back or peeled apart, as you said, which was very good. I think, though, when it comes to the additional training, I don't think 16 hours is absolutely necessary. But anytime you're going to give somebody additional training, especially when we're talking about civilians that are being issued CCWs and carrying guns. It can't hurt. I mean, it's going to benefit them. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. It's going to take them more time to get the CCW training completed. But in the end, if that additional training makes people safer, prevents an accidental discharge, or just, improves the overall quality of how people carry their CCWs, it's a win. And then when it comes to the background, if the additional background features such as the deep dive into social media, the looking at the character references, if you're married and you have a significant other, spouse or whatever it may be, to interview them regarding your suitability for a CCW. Those things are going to take more time, but in the end, if that process eliminates a few people here and there who truly shouldn't have had them, then it's a good thing. Because if they shouldn't have them, then we should know that they shouldn't have them. And if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. But it is going to lengthen the process, and it is going to increase the cost to obtain one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A lot of people are upset that, when the state puts these quotas in place, quantity doesn't always equal quality. I mean, 16 hours, maybe you could get just as much out of a 6-hour course. But yet people are going to have to pay more now to their instructors and eventually to obtain a permit altogether. So, people get upset that it's their American right with the Second Amendment to be able to carry, and now it's costing them more because of California's mandates.
Well, Tony, I think what the big issue is that no one has shown any justification or any proof that going to a 16-hour course versus an 8, like what it's actually going to improve. There's no stats or facts to show that, hey, 16-hour course people that went through that training have better training and are better at carrying and safer at carrying these guns. There's no factual evidence to support that. This is just something that the state came up with. And in a lot of ways, I think it's just another kind of roadblock, a bump in the road, a hurdle for people to go through in order to get a CCW. Because at the end of the day, I do feel like with this SB2 and how it was passed and how it was rolled out and the availability of the training for our CCW instructors, seems to me that folks up in Sacramento are really discouraging people from carrying CCWs instead of encouraging them. It seems like they're doing more to prevent people from having them and discouraging people from getting them. Because I think at the end of the day, their agenda is they're very anti-CCW. They're not pro-firearm. They're anti-CCW, and this is a way that they can reduce the number of those issued and the number of people that will actually be carrying them.
So last thing for you, and this might be a loaded question, but a lot of native Californians are frustrated at the way that this state has gone, and they feel that criminals get treated better or have more rights than them as good civilians. What needs to change in this state to restore some order and make people feel proud to be a Californian again?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that need to change in our state. I think one, folks in Sacramento need to stop playing politics and need to focus on public safety. Most of the sheriffs in California that I've talked to, we're very public safety focused. Politics don't keep people safe. We have to be focused on public safety. And I think that putting all the pressure with AB 109 and some of these other propositions back on the sheriffs and forcing us to house individuals that used to be in state prison when we're already overrun and have a lack of jail beds just puts more people involved in criminal activity back on the streets. It also prevents people from being arrested and getting into programs because we've taken the teeth out of the law and we've turned decriminalization and we've turned some laws into misdemeanors. And now instead of going to jail and potentially having to be referred to probation or kind of breaking the cycle of drug use or whatever it may be, they are just given a citation and they're walking down the street and they're not getting the help that they need and they won't. But what it comes down to is morals, ethics, and acceptability. And we as a state have shut down over 60 to 70,000 prison beds. And that's why I think we see a lot of folks out on the streets. We've decriminalized things. We've got rid of a lot of property crime sections, or we've increased the amount. So you see a lot of retail theft. You see a lot of this smash and grab. and there's no accountability. And I think that we as a society, we as the residents of California, have to start voting more of a law and order public safety platform if we want to see some things changed. And we need to find candidates that will run on those issues and will stick to that and stand up for us. Because right now, there's no punishment, and people are getting away with crime, whether it's identity theft and these other things. And it's so rampant that a lot of times people don't even call anymore. Stores don't call, people don't call and report it because it's become almost acceptable here in California.
And I think too, it comes down to seeking input from people who have been there and done that. I'm sure that if state legislators reached out to the California Sheriff's Association, all of you would be more than happy to sit down with them and craft a plan that you see works for everyone, right? But a lot of times you aren't invited to that table.
Well, Tony, that's a great point, and I think that those legislators, regardless of their party affiliation, who do talk to their local police chiefs and their sheriffs, have a good understanding of what's going on out there and what works legislatively and what doesn't, and and they're our best advocates. The issue that you have is really is people. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and it's not always going to be the easy decision. And I know that we don't want to criminalize, the unhoused, or we don't want to lock everybody up in prison and jails, and that's true. But at some point, you have to be able to have that as like for the punishment. There has to be some teeth in the law. That has to be a viable option. That hey, if I go steal 75 times from Best Buy or Lowe's, there's a chance I'm going to end up in jail, or I'm going to end up hopefully in prison, for a good period of time. And right now, I think people don't see that as a possibility. So they continue to do it and do it and do it over and over. And I think that's why we have kind of this, we've accepted it. And there's this breakdown within our society where if those people after a few times would go to prison like you used to for petty theft with priors, then I think it would send a message to other individuals that, hey, this isn't going to be a slap on the hand. This isn't going to be, loss prevention asking me for my receipt and I just get to walk away. All of a sudden, I commit 3 or 4 of these crimes. There's a chance I could be in prison. That's going to change people's mindset, and that's going to hopefully change how they act and how they behave.
All right, that's all I got. Anything else extra to toss in?
No, I think we've covered it all. I think we hit most of the points related to SB2.
Okay.